Hello and welcome to another edition of PAC's Check-ins. I'm your host, Sean Davido, and today I'm joined by Glenn Denman. Glenn is the Code Administration Manager for the City of Yakima. Thank you for joining me today, Glenn.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
Now, codes means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. A lot of people think of codes today as writing computer programs, but that's not what we're going to talk about today, is it, right?
Right.
Let's talk about what codes is for the City of Yakima. What is codes administration and what are city codes?
Yeah, so city codes are ordinances for the most part that are voted in by the city council. It's the constitutional process for having codes, and that way the public is represented with these activities. A lot of people don't like the codes, but that's why we have the whole process of city council and people being able to make those kinds of decisions and appeal to their council members. So, and obviously codes involves, like I said, it's not computer codes, which I know absolutely nothing about. It's issuing building permits and fire code permits, and which is alarm systems, sprinklers, tents, things like that. There's a lot of mechanical permits and plumbing and right-of-way use and things like that. So, and besides permits, it's not just codes and permits like that. There's also a lot of other codes. We have our business license codes in Title V. And so that involves issuing business licenses, which now people can apply for through the Department of Revenue. But we still have to get involved in that process so that they can get the City of Yakima endorsement on their business license. And we process hundreds of new ones every year at this time. And then, of course, we also take in a lot of customer complaints and handle customer questions over the phone, things like that. So
now people think of code violations. Can you talk about what is a code violation? If someone gets cited for a code violation, like you say, there are a lot of different codes. What could a code violation include?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, because I remember talking to one of our city attorneys a while back, and we tried to come down to the crux of the matter when it came to our code. I kept telling him, well, people are doing this and people are doing that. And he'd say, yeah, but what's the actual violation, right? So typically the actual violation, when somebody, let's say somebody builds a deck or something that needs a permit, and they build it without a permit, right? Then the violation isn't like how it's built or things like that. The violation is just simply the fact that they didn't obtain approval for it first. So that's what a permit is. It's permission, right? And so a code violation would be just simply doing something, I suppose, on a positive note, or proactive thing, without having obtained the permission for it. So that might sum it up.
And there are lots of different, like you say, there's a whole list of codes for the city. There's fire codes, there's building codes, all of that stuff. What other business does your office handle? You talked about the permitting and the business licenses. You inspect these. So you have fire inspectors, you have code inspectors. You guys do a lot of different services coming through code administration, right?
Yeah. So now, so we issue. The city right now has about, I think, around 6,500 business licenses on the books that are currently active. And so we do perform inspections on those, but only pretty much the first one as far as the code administration office does. The fire department, they take over with their risk reduction specialist team. They take over the annual inspections. So once they have their approval, maybe you build a new building, then we handle the initial inspections of the entire building, including fire-related stuff. And then the fire department, they take over with the annual upkeep inspections, basically. So that's them over there. And so we do a lot of things besides business licenses. We handle right-of-way use permits. We have hundreds of those. And the biggest job with those is maintaining the annual renewals, and outfits that have one of those permits, they have to have insurance and things. We have to verify their insurance annually. Then, of course, we handle all the building permits and plumbing permits, mechanical, fire code permits like tents. You know, the fire code covers a lot of things like tents and propane tanks, fire alarms, hood, restaurant hood suppression systems, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, besides the plumbing, mechanical, and other permits that seem more obvious. And then our front office or our front counter also handles all of the planning applications. So the zoning permits, the class ones and the CEPAs and things like that. So
now, one thing that I do want to talk about is vacant buildings and some of the dilapidated buildings. I know your office is working on that and identifying and taking care of some of those buildings. Can you talk about that in the program that you're working on with that?
Yeah. So first of all, I think people have to realize that a vacant building isn't necessarily in violation. So it would be the vacant, and like you said, vacant and dilapidated, the two coupled together. Usually one is hand in hand with the other. A lot of vacant buildings are out there that are dilapidated. And so the International Property Maintenance Code that we have, it addresses those vacant buildings with specific criteria. So it's not really subjective. It's not like the code officer just thinks it's vacant. There's about a dozen or so items in that code that we can compare the building to. Hey, does it have this? Does it have that? It literally just goes down a list. And so we can make a determination from that code of what constitutes a vacant and dilapidated, or it's not just dilapidated, but dilapidated would be considered dangerous to a certain level. So, and then once we make that determination, then we send out our notices. We usually give people like around 30 days to reply. So if we have one of these houses that say the house has a fire, there's a certain amount of time where they have to clean up the fire debris, which would be just the stuff as a result of the fire, like furniture out in the yard and things like that, or burnt lumber laying around. They have to clean that up within 10 days. And then we have more of an ongoing process to address the building itself. So a building that has been burned, it would have obviously certain dangerous elements to it. And we try to give people a reasonable amount of time to reply to a letter, because we like to know what their plans are for those buildings. And it's the ones that we don't get any reply back on. Those are the ones that can be more problematic. We have to send additional letters and maybe elevate the case to another level of seeking compliance. So.
Now, a lot of those buildings, like you were saying, it's not just the dilapidation or someone moves out of their house and they're waiting to sell it. It's a danger. These places can be dangerous to the community, right? And so that's where you guys take action.
Yeah, and they may not be dangerous, like it's not like the building's necessarily going to fall over onto the neighbor's house or something like that. But it's dangerous to the community in the sense of what condition is that building in for, or what condition is the building in for when people want to move into the building. So it's a general public concern in that manner. So it may not it may not be ready to fall over onto the sidewalk, but it's still, if people are going to move into a building like that, it has to have a safe elements within it and sanitary things like that. So.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about, I know you guys do a lot of stuff, and part of that is with the Clean City efforts. Can you talk about the Clean City efforts it's a multiple divisional outreach between city departments. Can you talk about what your department does specifically, some of the actions?
Yeah, absolutely. So Clean City obviously involves the codes division, as well as refuse and police and legal. A lot of people kind of leave the legal part out, or they just don't think of the legal part of things, because all of these activities that we perform have a legal element to them. So legal has staff that's pretty much dedicated to Clean City. YPD has staff that's dedicated to Clean City. And of course, refuse is probably the most obvious one, but we also have ourselves, we have 2 employees that are fully dedicated to Clean City. And we have 1 employee that 5% of their salary is paid from Clean City. And that person takes in the complaints and processes them. They create cases for the various complaints, and then they choose who that's going to be divvied out to, basically. So we get a lot of graffiti complaints on Yak Back, which is the main medium for receiving complaints. And then they decide if it's going to be a person, one of our graffiti abatement people that'll take care of it, or our other full-time employee, which is mostly working with YPD out on the streets and cleanups in the right of way and things like that. So basically, we have two employees plus the 5% paid person that handles graffiti and all of the right of way cleanups. But they work again with the other employees that are also dedicated to clean the city. So
wonderful. And I've been out with the crews. They do a great job. They're cleaning up tons of stuff, taking graffiti off the walls. So great job to them, and great job to your department. Yeah. We've talked about a lot of stuff. What else do we need to talk about? You guys have such a vast reach. What else should we talk about, Glenn?
Yeah, we do have a vast reach, and one of the things that I've noticed within the codes division is that practically every complaint in the city comes through our division at some level, and so we were always taking kind of the brunt of all this stuff, and we were the ones that would have to kind of divvy that out and decide, well, this isn't something the codes does, and so we'll get somebody else involved in some other division or whatever. So with Yak Back, that's really kind of been cleaned up a little bit, because now, if you have a street light out or something like that, you can, put in the Yak Back that's directly related to streets, or you can, put in a complaint that's directly related to parks. And so now that's being distributed out better. But even with that, we still handle a majority of the complaints, at least that I'm aware of. I don't see all of their other complaints, but we do handle the majority of the complaints. And but we're happy to take in whatever complaint we get, and we're happy just to go ahead and refer that to the proper department if it's not our department. So
now, that's not all you guys do. You guys also do animal control and some other things. Talk about that, and parking enforcement, all of the things that people see city employees out there doing for code enforcement.
Yeah, so I'll start with animal control. So the City of Yakima has a contract with the Humane Society to where the Humane Society handles all of the dogs and cats too, but mostly dogs for the city. So people have, if we have to deal with some kind of animals, then they're the ones that are the clearinghouse for that, if you will. They house them, they adopt them out and things like that. So that's a pretty important part of animal control. But we also have a full-time animal control officer that goes out and deals with things like maybe a dog in a hot car. That's something that a lot of people don't think about. With summer coming on, obviously that's something that needs to be considered. And then also barking dog complaints and bites, things like that. So the animal control officer it's really kind of a dangerous job, actually. And as far as parking enforcement goes, our division does not handle parking enforcement. That's handled through the utilities division, James Dean's group. And they have a parking enforcement officer. However, with that being said, the codes division does have an element of parking enforcement within it, and it's in our Title 11, where it's parking on the front yard and vehicles elevated above the ground. So if you have a front yard that is not developed such for a parking space, like concrete or gravel or blacktop or whatever, if it's not improved to that level and cars are parked on the lawn, then our division is able to go out and write a citation for that. Or if you have a vehicle elevated on the ground, above the ground on jacks, maybe they're working on it, it's out in the front yard, it's kind of in a dangerous place. Now, parking enforcement technically is like I said, is an operation from the utilities division. And so they have the park enforcement officer that only deals with cars parked in the public way, cars that are improperly parked on the streets or what have you. So there's kind of two parts to parking enforcement in that sense.
Now let's talk about some of those online services. A lot of the things that Codes does can be found on the city's website, and they can apply for certain things. Can you talk about some of the online features that Codes has available?
Yeah, we try to encourage everybody to apply for permits online. They can't always be just issued over the counter like that, or online issuance, if you will. Some permits need certain levels of review. So like there's some permits like say getting replacing a sewer line. You already have a sewer line, there's a problem, you can get that permit online. There's certain things there that certain qualifications that have to be verified. And then if you want to get a re-roof permit, you can go online, get a re-roof permit. It can be issued right there on the spot. Things like that. But other permits that require building plans and submittals and things like that, you can still apply online, but it's not necessarily going to get issued online. So we're still working on having more of an electronic element when it comes to permitting online.
Now, all that information can be found. If people want information about Codes, they can go online to yakimawa.gov. How else can people find out information? If they just got questions about Codes, or they want to know how to get a permit, how do they get a hold of you guys?
Yeah, I mean, they can call our front office anytime, pretty much from 8 to 5. They can dial 509-575-6126 and talk to one of our front permit counter staff, who are very, very friendly and helpful. And they can answer all their questions there. Or you can go online to the permitting or codes division page or planning division page and find out there. But sometimes a phone call is better for some people. I always appreciate that myself. I'd rather talk to somebody in person. If I can find it online, I will, but I also like to talk to people on the phone. So
sometimes just that personal connection and being able to understand what you're trying to ask. Sometimes searching online doesn't give you all the information, and it is your people there are very helpful, and they have a lot of information for our residents.
Yeah. And then they'll help you maybe navigate the online portion of it as well. So
absolutely. Okay, we've talked about a lot of stuff. Is there anything else that you think we need to get out to people about Codes?
Not really. I think we pretty much covered everything. And so I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to speak on these things.
I appreciate all your time and everything you do for Yakima. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
And thank you all for joining us.
Yep, take care.